Hello, beautiful, beautiful spiritual badasses. How are you guys? Where are you tuning in from? Let me know how you guys are, where you're tuning in from. If you're catching the replay, hashtag replay. This is the first time that I've gone on since the New Year's, so happy New Year's as well. It's been a little bit of a crazy couple of days for me, super busy. I've just been catching up on a lot of work. A lot of stuff has been happening with the book. So I'm just gonna make sure everything is working correctly, and then I have some fun stuff for you guys today, some shadow work, some actual healing stuff. So now let's make sure everything is working, because I know sometimes it takes a minute to get everything rolling. Yep, here I am, I'm live. All right, so if you're on, say hi. If you're catching the replay, hashtag or replay. So let's talk about shadow work for a little bit. So I've been called to shadow work for the last, I don't know, months already, and I've just been really inclined to try shadow work because, like, every time I go on I've been having all these synchronicities that just keep leading me to shadow work. So every time I go on like a YouTube channel, something comes up with like a shadow work. This whole playlist that I have, like every single song that goes on, like it's a goddess playlist. Every single song that goes on, like when I'm supposed to hear it, when I'm actually like listening to the lyrics, they're talking about like your shadow. Or another example, one of my goddesses is a shadow goddess, Goddess Kali, that I work very closely with. She's a shadow goddess. What else has come up? Like I talked about my story of the whole warriors, like they go through their shadows, they heal their hearts, and in order to become that warrior. So that's another synchronicity that's been coming up in my life about shadow work. So there's just been a lot of these synchronicities that have been leading me to shadow work. Oh, a friend of mine, she gave me a book for Christmas, and it was all about like calming your magic, and there was lots of tarot stuff in there. Tarot is a sign of shadow work. So just all of these things start popping up. And then I've shared this many times already that I am definitely one that if spirit talks to me, I will listen. Synchronicities popping up into your life is spirit talking to you, and you have to listen to them, because whatever messages that they have for you, they're guiding you in that direction. The divine is guiding you, and you need to listen to it. So I've been guided to shadow work, and I'm like, all right, I just need to like sit down, do my research about it, start actually doing it, and let's see what comes out of it, because every single day I've been like learning about shadow work. So what is shadow work? Shadow work is essentially deeper dive into your ego, further than the ego. It's your shadow. So it has positives and negatives. A lot of people, when they think of shadow work, they're like, oh, I want to stay away from it because the shadow's darkness and the shadow's evil, and I don't want anything to do with that. Tom, my partner, he's just like that. He would not touch tarot cards. He would not do anything with the shadow because he was afraid of that shadow. And a lot of people have that connotation. However, there's light and dark everywhere. Where there's light, there's also dark. That's the whole balance. You look at like a yin-yang symbol, for example, there's a light side and a dark side. There's that balance of light and dark. And it's up to us to make sure that that balance is in order, because where there is light, there's also that darkness, and we have that darkness within ourselves as well. So we do need to heal that. We do need to touch it, and then we do need to act upon it in order to move past it as well. Because once you do, like, there's so many beautiful things that the shadow could hold, where it's actually super beautiful, and some of your gifts and some of your biggest pleasures lie in the shadow as well. But we need to move past that and get into this beautiful healing state where we work with that shadow. So the shadow, some people believe that the shadow was developed in your past lives. So doing a past life regression on your shadow is something amazing. Lots of people, I highly recommend doing like a past life. I haven't done one for myself, But I've done other past life stuff, but not for shadow work specifically. So past life stuff is really good for shadow work as well. Some other people, they believe that your shadow starts when you were a child. So there's lots of things that come up in our programming that cause our shadow to be there. And similar to the ego, when your shadow, when you feed the shadow, when you feed those triggers, because that's essentially what the shadow is typical day-to-day triggers and stuff that pop up, which cause you to react in a certain way. Those triggers are what happened from your childhood or from other past lives. I'll give you an example. Me, so I've been doing shadow work for 2 days now. I'm very new to it, but I wanted to share my experiences with it because while I was doing my shadow work, something that came up for me was lead by example. And I've always believed that you should lead by example and you should share your stories. And really, the way that you teach is by teaching yourself and healing yourself. You can heal the world if you heal yourself, kind of thing. So I was doing a lot of healing work, and something that came up for me was defensiveness. I get very, very defensive if I'm in an argument. The first thing, I blame everyone but myself. And I raise my voice, I act out, and I just have these triggers that stem from my shadows. Those triggers, I've learned, happened because of my childhood, because of my parents' relationship, because every time that they got in an argument or they got triggered, they lashed out. They acted defensive, and then they are the ones that acted like out of hand. And that stemmed down to my shadow, and now I'm doing the same thing in my relationship as well. That's a great example. Another example for, let's say that there's also goodness to shadow. So for example, like I also was never thought emotion, because my parents are not very emotional people. You guys will read this in my book. Like, they're not very emotional at all. And so I never grew up with a lot of emotions. I hated talking about feelings. I hated talking about emotions. I just hated it. I hated being vulnerable. That was just not for me. However, these vulnerabilities, like, they lied in my shadow, and that's why now I can work with it, because I'm aware of that, and I can reach into those depths, clear them, heal them, forgive them, and then now be in a place where I can speak my feelings, and I can talk about my vulnerabilities and my emotions and my feelings and everything that I do care about. However, with those feelings also, let's say someone wants to be a public speaker, but they've always been afraid of speaking because their parents didn't show them emotion, and now they don't know how to show emotions. So now they can't be a public speaker because they have all this fear inside of them and these triggers inside of them. But if they work through that shadow part of them and those parts where they had those fears and those triggers coming up of not being emotional, not being vulnerable, then once they work through them, then those magical, beautiful gifts can emerge into their lives, and they can actually become public speakers because they've worked past that, they've forgiven that, and they've healed that part. So I highly, highly encourage you guys to work with your shadows. I just started working with my shadow yesterday, actually, or 2 days ago. And so there's a ton of meditations that you can do on YouTube, anywhere, Google them. There's a ton of them. I was actually thinking of doing a meditation myself and offering it to the group because I love making meditations. 2, I just feel like this is some really deep healing work that a lot of these people in this group, all my spiritual badasses, I know that you guys can benefit from it because it's something that I'm learning to deal with and I'm learning to heal on. And I was saying, just because if you heal yourself, you can heal the world. And I really believe that shadow work is going to allow me to step into that next stage of my life and really step into what I'm supposed to be, how I'm supposed to be as a leader and as a teacher, and then also allow me to heal parts that I didn't even know that I had in order for me to heal. Because I also believe that every single person can benefit from healing. No matter how much healing you've done, you can also benefit from healing even more. So I highly encourage you guys to check out some shadow work, check out some meditations online. Another great thing, another great exercise for shadow work is journal prompts. I've created myself 21 journal prompts for shadow work. Some of these prompts are very deep, but the whole point of journaling is to get deep inside your feelings, inside your emotions, and into what it is that you're supposed to get out of it, because journaling could be a creative outlet. And it can also be very, very healing. Like, I've found love in journaling. I never enjoyed writing. I just didn't enjoy scribbling, but lately I've really found love and joy in it. So why not use it in an advantage for doing some shadow work? Some questions that I came up with are like, what kind of fears do you have? Why do you have these fears? What kind of triggers do you have? Why do you have these triggers? When do these triggers come up? Things like that. Really, you can also like look up a whole bunch of shadow work triggers, or if you'd like me to post the ones that I've created, just right down below, and then I'll be happy to share some of those as well. So I highly recommend, if you're starting any kind of healing journey, I highly recommend doing it daily for a minimum of 21 days. 30 days, 14 days, 21 days is the amount that it takes in order to change a habit. So if you're doing something for 21 days, it'll be really beneficial for you to start whenever, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whenever is good for you, but do it for the full 21 days. And that's exactly when it's going to be able to help get into your inner self and your inner guidance. And then the more you spend time doing it, the deeper it'll get. And then the more benefit you'll also get, but also the more knowledge you'll be able to get from whatever journaling that you're doing. So that is all that I have for you guys from shadow work. So mine has been beautiful. Like I said, I already realized that like some of the things that come up in my relationships and like certain ways that I act, like my defensiveness, like I do that a lot. So that's something that I need to work through and get into a better, higher vibration where I don't keep feeding this shadow, because similar to the ego, if you feed the shadow, if you feed the ego, it will keep getting bigger. And that's what we don't want. We don't want them to keep getting bigger. Instead, we want to keep them smaller. But by keeping them smaller, we're aware of it. So we need to be aware of these things. So if something comes up for you when you're journaling, like look at stuff that's happened with your parents. How did they treat you growing up? How did you grow up? Like what kind of insecurities did you have with your parents? What kind of stuff did you have that came up while you were growing up? Because some people believe that the shadow started as a young child, when you were a child. So maybe your parents told you, oh, you can't cry. You have to be a tough person. You have to keep doing this, you can't do this. So those are triggers that might happen in your life now, and you might be understanding them now as an adult. Those are also your shadows aside. So you need to pay attention to some of those triggers, and once you pay attention to them, you could realize, why am I feeling this? Why am I going through this? And then you can evaluate it and also change it into a positive, versus being stuck in that. But we also have to heal that side too. And then part of the healing comes with forgiveness. So forgiveness is one of the best ways of healing. Actually, we have to forgive ourselves. We have to forgive the people around us. And forgiveness is love. So we all have to return back to love. The shadow work also goes back to love. It's light and love and everything in between as well. So that's all I have for the shadow work for you guys. That's about it. If you have any questions about shadow work, if you have any questions about certain types of meditations, again, YouTube is amazing for meditations. Like there's tons of meditations. I just typed in shadow work meditations into YouTube a couple days ago, and there's a ton of them that came up. So I highly recommend you getting in touch with your shadow and also stepping through it, seeing what kind of stuff you can find out about yourself and your shadow. You'll be amazed at what you find, because I'm very intrigued, and I'm committed to at least 21 days, if not more, because I'm ready to heal, and I know you guys are too. For more tips and tricks on business and spirituality, join us inside the Spirituality for Badass Babes Facebook group.